Hi, this is Simon from Yogaloft in London, and welcome to our next edition of Chatting to Teachers. That's not the official name. And today we have the lovely Kate Rathod, who is a senior Iyengar teacher based in London, and she teaches out of Yogaloft. Hi, Kate. How are you today?
Hello, I'm fine. Thank you. Very nice to be with you, be here.
Thanks for joining us.
No problem.
So why don't you start us off by telling us how did you come to yoga? How did it all start for you?
Okay, well, I'm going to start by saying that I listened to your lovely interview with Claudia. I don't know if that was the first one, but that was the first one I listened to.
Mm-hmm.
And I've known Claudia for many years as a friend, as a practitioner, a colleague. And I just found I really enjoyed her interview. She was very open and gave me lots of just kind of, I started to think, okay, well, where did my yoga journey start? And she spoke about doing kind of ballet and making shapes with her body and feeling that was very important to her when she was very young. So that got me thinking about where I started. And then I listened to the amazing interview that you did with Christian Pisano, who actually I've never really been a student of. I think I went to one class many, many, many years ago when I was a baby practitioner. And a friend kind of signed me in and brought me along, and it was way over my head. And I had a couple of injuries and I shouldn't really have been there. Anyway, and that was my only experience. But listening to that lovely interview that you did with him kind of blew me away. It was just fascinating, and I'd like to listen to it again. There was so much in it that interested me and made me really think about, well, what yoga means to me now. What did it mean then? What does it mean now? What's the journey between the two, etc. So I shall be revisiting that interview. And then I thought, oh my God, Simon's asked me to do an interview next, and I've got to follow Christian Pisano. I can't do that. So Simon and I had a little back and forwards, my little panic messages saying, I can't follow it, I can't do that. And he said, don't worry, it'll be fine. So here I am. So that's my little backstory. So I'm not going to be following anything. I'm just going to be sharing my experience.
As it should be. Which is what we want to know about you. And,
sure.
And also, actually, as much about you as about your thoughts on the subject, because I've been to some of your classes, and it's always interesting to go to different teachers' classes. And I remember the last class I came to of yours was at the Maida Vale Institute. I think you were covering for Alaric.
Yeah.
And it was a 2-hour class, and I went home and I literally lay down on the floor in the kitchen until I had to basically no, but that was great. I had to peel myself off the floor. It was just, you're just so steady and focused. And that's kind of what people, when people talk about your style, about your teaching, it's just the steadiness and the kind of, there's a rhythm to what you do. And it was just like, I knew that I felt like, because obviously you go to some teachers, you get lots of esoteric teaching, but sometimes you need to go to teachers to just work on your asana to improve it. You can, otherwise you're wandering around in the clouds.
Yeah.
So what do you, when you teach, what message are you trying to convey to your students?
Okay, so when I'm going to give you a little backstory to come to that. So I'm going to go right back to kind of primary school. And when I was a very little girl, I remember being in the school hall. I went to Mallory's actually around the corner. And I remember being in the Mallory's school hall in a gym lesson and being asked to do Kapotasana, which is where you lie out on your front, you extend your arms back, lift your chest up and back, take your head back, bend your legs and put your feet and your head together. And I can't do that now, but I could do it then. And I didn't even have to try then. It was just the teacher saying, make this shape. And I thoroughly enjoyed making that shape. I was inspired and encouraged by that. Well, I can't even remember the teacher now, but by that teacher. And I loved that. It was a form of gymnastics really at that age. And it was a gym class. So I think that was really probably my first kind of conscious thought of, oh, I really like making shapes with my body. Mm-hmm. And then as a little bit older, I was encouraged to go to ballet. which is similar to Claudia, by my mum. And I really enjoyed that, just kind of dancing, springing around, being light, making shapes, being creative. And I didn't do that for too long because I think it got too kind of formal and it was too formal. You know, you could only do things in certain ways. And at that age, I wanted to have more freedom. So then I ended up doing gymnastics at Wilson Sports Centre and got the old Bagger Awards. Used to get a cloth patch, an embroidered cloth patch that was actually quite big. You used to sew it onto your leggings or whatever. So I ended up doing my different levels of Bagger gymnastics and thoroughly enjoyed that. And I also, this is quite a sweet memory for me, which again, listening to Claudia's interview kind of brought up for me, was when I was very young. I must have been about 5 or 6. I was in my grandfather's house in Hampstead in his front room, and he used to like playing music, just classical music and kind of whatever current songs were in the charts at the time. And he was playing music in his big front room, and at one end of the room he had a cabinet that was built in like 3 sections, like a triptych almost, that had mirrors in. And on a coffee table in that room, he had a Lynn Marshall book. Now, Lynn Marshall was a British, she was a model and an actress and also a yoga practitioner in the 70s.
All right.
And she used to present the first television programs on the BBC. My God, I wish they had them now. So Lynn, I didn't watch those, but that's who Lynn Marshall was. So she was the first, I suppose, BBC yoga teacher.
Right.
And she had a book, a coffee table book with pictures in. And I remember at about 5 or 6 being in my grandfather's house with the book on the coffee table, flicking through and looking at the photos of Lynn Marshall doing her postures. And then I would move into front of the 3 mirrors in the cabinet at the end of the room and copy those shapes that she was making.
Wow.
So that's a really clear memory. And I didn't know that was yoga. It was just shape making, and it was using my body. So that's kind of how I came really to yoga right at the beginning, was shape making and using my body for creativity, expression, freedom, probably stress relief, though how stressed one is as a young child is whatever. So that when I was very young. And then after kind of following on from that, I then never really did any exercise. I did trampolining at school, but I loved to dance. Right. So in all of those kind of teenage, young adult years, I would just go clubbing and dance for hours and hours and hours and hours. And that, again, is making shapes with your body, using your energy, being creative, kind of getting lost in it all inside yourself. It was quite therapeutic. So I suppose it's quite natural that I came to yoga, really, as I matured, as I got older. And how I came to that was I used to work in publishing. So I used to sit in front of a computer day in, day out, designing books. Mm-hmm. And I had an opportunity to take some voluntary redundancy in a reshuffle at the company. And I got quite a lot of money. There was quite a lot of money in those at that time. So I had an opportunity to go off traveling with a lot of money. And I had some friends who were in Australia at the time. So I thought, right, I'm going to go and join them. So I bought one of those trail finders around the world tickets. Don't know if they still do them. So that was in 1993. So I went off to Australia and did very much the drinking your way up the East Coast and all of that kind of thing. But I ended up traveling for 3 years, and the last port of call was India. Right. And I think traveling for many people is kind of trying to find who you are and find how you fit in the world. And what is the world, and how big is the world, and where do I fit within each country in the world, within each culture, within religions, within belief systems. So I think traveling is a lot of that kind of exploration. So I ended up in India in 1995 after traveling through Southeast Asia and being in Australia and New Zealand. And I really struggled with my first month in India. I got terrible gastroenteritis, I got really ill, and I was very frustrated at the fact that it could take 6 hours to change some money in those days, you know, I've got a little story about that. I just kind of remember that you'd have to take all of your documents into the bank and then queue up to be given a token, a little brass token, round token with a number on, and then you have to go and sit down with your number and wait to be called. So then like 40 minutes later or something, you're called, and they take your passport and you fill in a form, and they give you a bit of the form and another number and another token, and you go and sit down and you wait. And another 45 minutes, and then you go to another counter and they look at your form and check it all and cross-reference it with the passport, and then they make you wait again. And then finally, perhaps 3 or 4 hours later, you get your cash. So I was really frustrated at that. I was used to living in
colonial influence gone wrong in India.
Yeah, exactly. It was still quite similar to that. But I then, instead of kind of going home, I just thought, well, I've got a year's visa, because you could get a year visa at that time. I had a year's visa, and I just thought, I recovered from being very unwell. And I remember looking at The Lonely Planet, because that was the guidebook then. This was before the internet, before mobile phones, before all of that. So The Lonely Planet was the guide, the Bible. And it said, I was in Delhi and feeling very, very unwell. I thought, well, I just need to go somewhere to get well again. And I looked in The Lonely Planet, and Dharamsala, the write-up for Dharamsala was apple pie and custard and wholesome meals. And I thought, oh my God, that's what I need to do. I need to go to Dharamsala. So I went off on the bus to Dharamsala, and I got better, and I enjoyed the apple pie. And I also found myself very intrigued by the Tibetan Buddhists up there. And there were lots of, there were monks and nuns from different countries, from European countries, France, Germany, Australia, all over the world. And there was a discipline. They were all following this belief. They were all searching for their answers. And I really enjoyed their energy. They were very grounded, very quiet, very thoughtful, very present. And I was very intrigued by that. So, and that was that. That was my first kind of, okay, well, that's quite interesting. And then I carried.
How old are you now at this age, Kate?
Well, this was still in 1995. So given that was, how many years ago was that? That was, well, I'm 54 now. You can do the maths.
Well, I'm not going to do the maths. Young. Let's just say young.
Young. So, and then I carried on traveling around India, and after, with just got to have I suppose my spiritual search, you could say, had been ignited. So I was very inspired by the monks and the nuns, and then I ended up going to a Tibetan Buddhist retreat center in Bodh Gaya, which was the birthplace of the Buddha. And I stayed there for a month, and I was again very intrigued and inspired by Buddhist teachings. And it was on a campus in Bodh Gaya that was actually run by Westerners, and had a lot of Westerners coming in and out looking for their spiritual answers. And I ended up going back there actually subsequent years and working there for free, just helping to run the place. But I was fascinated by Tibetan Buddhism, and a lot of it really resonated with me. And what I liked about it was the, I suppose, mindfulness, the looking within, the concept that kind of all life is suffering because there is greed, there is attachment, there is, etc. And that was something that resonated with me. So it's kind of, I was like, okay, I'm not sure about all the different deities and all the different practices that one had to do, and your full prostrations around the stupa and all of that. I wasn't sure about all of that. That was a little bit too much for me, but I enjoyed the teachings and the meditative side of it, the contemplative side of it. So, and then after that, from Bodh Gaya, I ended up traveling around and just meeting people on the way who were on their own searches and discussing different I suppose, religions and philosophies. So really, India is a fantastic place for that. It's very open to all of that. And there are people with different ideas and coming from different places. And then I ended up in Jaipur doing a Vipassana meditation course, which is with Iyengar, the Burmese master. And that really was sitting on your bum for 10 days watching your breath.
You did the 10-day version.
Oh my God. I tell you, it's the hardest thing I have ever done. And there were no mobile phones in these days. There was no internet. You weren't allowed any writing implements. You weren't allowed any books. You weren't allowed any Sony Walkman headphones. It just had to be you and your stuff. And you were encouraged to sit and watch your breath for 10 days. And it was very interesting what came up. And where one's resistances are and where one is fighting just being with it all. So that was quite a transformative experience. And it was actually in my last few days in India, having traveled about for a year. So I then left India and came home. But really, I wanted something, some tool to help me connected to the spiritual search, the internal search on who I am, what's important to me, what connects with me, how do I connect with the world, how do I connect with others? And I kind of needed a tool.
Right.
And when I came home from traveling, I'd been away for nearly 3.5 years, and a year in India, I had terrible culture shock coming back to London. The 10 pence piece had changed, and I remember trying to pay with an old one and then saying, no, we don't take this anymore. And I was like, oh my God. And the Channel Tunnel had been built while I was away, and the internet had been invented while I'd been away. So it wasn't just I was away for 3 years. I was kind of away for such a significant period of time. So much happened. It was like I'd come back into another life. I also remember being very overwhelmed by the choice. And my mother, I came back having been quite ill, so I was very, very skinny, and my mother was horrified. So she took me to Sainsbury's in Ladbroke Grove, which was new. And it's massive. It still feels massive. But having come from India, the choice, I was just overwhelmed by the choice, the people, the amount of food, the kind of possible waste of the amount of food. And I had to go and sit in the car while she carried on shopping for me because I was just overwhelmed by it all. And I found that I continued to be overwhelmed by the Western lifestyle, and I used to have to take myself off into dark rooms with nothing going on around me.
You were finding it overwhelming to be back in London when the Indian experience in itself is, well, I mean, I suppose you could find that overwhelming too, just, being around the stations or in the streets where there's just so much noise. But I do understand completely what you mean, because it's a very different kind of bustle and hustle and bustle, completely different. And also I suppose there's a sense, even though there's so much struggle there and difficulty, there is a sense of peace or peacefulness in the
acceptance.
Yeah, in the kind of cultural mindset. Whereas here, you stop at a how often these days, it seems to be daily, where I'm sitting in a traffic light, it turns green, and before my foot touched the accelerator, the person behind me is hooting.
Yeah.
So I do understand what you mean about the culture.
I think there's more of acceptance, and whether that's to do with the kind of caste system and what you're born into, that's your lot. You're not moving from that. That is who you are. That defines you. Whether it comes from that kind of culture and history historically, I don't know, or a mindset, or perhaps more of a religious mindset. It's kind of acceptance. But I've also found that being quite, as I say, I found India very difficult to begin with. But as I began to accept, I began to enjoy it more. Mm-hmm. So it was more, oh my God, I can't do the way they change money here. It's driving me bloody nuts. I'm going to go away from it. It was like, hang on a minute, just go with the flow. Just accept it. Just see what happens if you just let go of trying to change it. See what happens if you just stay with it. Where are you going to go with that? So that was how I managed to get around India for a year, and I loved it. And ever since going to India, I've been back every year until the pandemic. So I've been to India for 25 years in a row.
Really?
And so not going has been actually quite difficult, and I miss it terribly. I've always felt it's my spiritual home.
I concur with you. I feel the same.
Yeah.
From the first time I went there, I was just, wow, I just feel completely different here. Absolutely love the place. Can't wait to go back. And I've also missed it a lot since you can't travel there.
Yeah. And it's the birthplace of yoga, isn't it? So
So you were saying that you were looking for a tool.
I was looking for a tool. So I came back from my traveling in a bit of a state, looking for a tool. And my mum gave me a flyer for a foundation course in yoga at the Institute in Maida Vale. So me and my mum signed up for this foundation course. And in those days, it wasn't so structured, as in, if you go to a foundation course what they call a beginner's course now, everybody is teaching the same course. There's a planned course and everybody teaches and you do it in a sequence. It's all very well thought out. In those days, I think the teacher just did what they want. So I went along to this foundation course, and the teacher was Marina Jung, who I think is now in Australia, a German woman, incredibly strong, inspiring, mobile, flexible. And I just remember some of the postures she demonstrated in the class. I just assumed that everybody could do them because she did them with such ease. I might have to do something about the neighbour's noise if it's disturbing. And I then tried to copy her, as you do. The teacher demonstrates in the class and you copy. And it was like, oh my God, how can she do that? I can't get anywhere near that. And that was it. I was hooked. Absolutely, from that first class, I thought, this is what chokes me up. This is what I've always wanted to do. I have found it. This is my tool. And that was it. And my mum gave up and I carried on. And that was 25 years ago. I've been practicing for 25 years now.
Wow.
So that's how I came to yoga.
So what you just said quite inspired me, because, so many people when they start out doing, there's two things I wanted to say. First of all, I've taught the beginners course at Yogaloft at least 4 times now. And every time I go to teach it, I have to teach the sequence that you wrote out. It's quite a strong sequence for beginners to do. Is that a similar sequence to the kind of sequence that was formalized at Maida Vale? It
is Maida Vale's but it was adapted for Yogaloft and for a slight difference in timing and the number of weeks. But yes, I adapted it from the Maida Vale foundation course, beginners course.
That's interesting for me to know that. And it's just teaching it is, I think, wow, I'm always impressed by getting total beginners through that sequence, because they're quite strong and they're quite long and they're quite demanding. And then the other thing that you said was lots of beginners, when I'm sure you've taught hundreds, when they look in awe and how am I ever going to do that? And to know that you were in the same position, because I've seen the pictures on your website, which are very inspiring, of you doing asana. So how did you was it just repetition, study, or do you think you're
okay, so if you remember, I've been enjoying making shapes in my body since I was 5-6 years old. So that it kind of came quite naturally to me. Also gymnastics, ballet. So, and I have the physical body that is not supremely challenged in making nice shapes. Okay. So it's partly what I was born with, and then partly loving making shapes with my body, and partly sheer hard work and determination and discipline and just getting on with it. So for the first 12 years of my yoga practice, I practiced every day except Christmas Day, every single day for at least 90 minutes, often for 2-3 hours.
Really?
I mean, it was almost obsessive.
You're talking about but after you finished your beginner's course,
yeah,
you then began practicing daily.
Yeah. And that might have actually been going to a class every day. And then I came to my own mat and it was every day, but it really was every day. And that's not an exaggeration. I was addicted.
How
And
did you know? How did you know what to practice?
I've always written down classes that I've done as a student. I come home and nowadays I talk them into my phone on the voice memo. I'll just go through, okay, we sat and and then we came to sitting onto the heels and then we went forwards and I experienced that I was tight on this side and then we came to it. So I just kind of not reteach. I just write down the whole class in a book. I've got lots of books. I've got 15 notebooks of classes over the years. And I often go back and practice those classes, sometimes on my own the next day or within that week. And it's really interesting what different things come to you. There's different understanding because you're not doing directed by the teacher. You're not saying, Kate, hang on, you're not lifting your front thighs up enough. Your back leg isn't straight. You're feeling all of that and you feel different things. So that's how I kind of learned sequencing, I suppose, is by writing down all the classes and practicing them again and again. And it kind of becomes second nature. And then, of course, when you've been practicing for a very long time, your body tells you where it wants to go next. So I might come to a mat these days, my practice beforehand. I've taught 2 classes this morning, so I was a bit kind of tired in my body. And I thought, you know what, I just need to go upside down and I need to get over a chair and open my chest. So I thought, right, let's do a bit of dog down in the ropes. Let's hang from my ropes and then let's go back over a chair, work into a back arch with support. And then let's go upside down again. And then I'm going to have a snack before I go and meet Simon. So you kind of, you think, well, hang on, how am I going to use my tool of my practice to help me to be where I need to be? And I need to be grounded and steady and quiet and open. So I made a sequence for myself to get me to where I wanted to be.
Interesting. So in a way, it's like a bit like understanding to paraphrase what you just said, to understand the kind of mind, I'm going to body, mind, state of mind you want to be in, or state of being you want to be in. And then you can actually tailor make using the poses to actually create that state of mind for yourself, which is essentially summing up what yoga is meant to do, because we're meant the kind of part of the aim, if there's an aim, is to become totally at peace with yourself and in tune with everything around you.
Yes, and one could say it a different way, in that having taught 2 classes, just for instance, I was very out of my own body, big in my head, and just, I suppose what I was thinking of what yoga helps me to do is, I suppose sometimes with the fast, the busy life and all our commitments and running around here and there, I sometimes feel like a ball in a pinball machine. And you know how they kind of ejected up into the table, I don't know what the technical words are, and then they bounce around and skitter and jump back and forwards and lights go off and sounds are made and then they drop down into the hole and then they're ejected out again and off you go again. And I suppose sometimes I feel like that. I feel like a pinball inside, not inside myself, but in the world. And it's like, oh my God, this is just, I can't do this. I just want to stop. I just need to be in the present moment. I need all of that chatter, the lights, the banging, the sounds. I just need them all to stop. And so meditation is a tool that one might use to get to that, or just sitting down quietly or getting onto your mat. So it's less, it's more recognizing where you are and thinking, do you know what? I'm so outside of myself in every way. I'm so out of touch with my true nature that I need to stop and do something to come back to myself. And that's what my practice is about. And that's what my sequence is about. So in the same way, I might feel, so if today I was feeling quite tired and I needed to get upside down to quieten my head down to become more grounded. Sometimes I might feel really thick and dull and lazy and tamasic, in which case I think, right, I've got to do a whole load of back arches today. I need to do some headstands, some drop backs, I need to, etc. So I'm so kind of out of myself in a thick, dull, heavy way. I'm not clear, I'm not awake. So therefore my practice will help me to become more a balance, isn't it?
So what's coming up for me is this curiosity that you have for just taking a moment to just observe where you are.
Yeah.
And make a kind of like a self-diagnosis. This is where I am. This is what I need to balance it out again.
Yeah.
Is that something that yoga kind of cultured in you, or is it something that you've kind of always done?
And it's certainly not something I've always done. As a youngster, you just go with that. You're just the pinball that gets ejected again and again and keeps bobbing around. And it's fun. And I love pinball machines, with the old flippers and keep it all going and that. And I suppose there's not all, I don't know if there's always been such a conscious conscious kind of desire to be more at one and to be calmer and more within myself. But I think, as I said, when I first went to Dharamsala, I was quite in awe of the groundedness and steadiness of the monks and the nuns. And I thought, oh my God, they're not kind of jittery, they don't answer back, they listen, they're woof. And there was something that I thought, oh my God, that's very attractive to me, because I'm a bit like a helium balloon sometimes. And I suppose this relates to the Ayurvedic understanding of the different, rajas and tamas and sattvic. So the different qualities that one has in oneself, and you're looking to balance them all. It's the same as the gunas in the yoga philosophy. You're looking to balance your sparkiness with your dullness, with your heaviness, with your lightness. You're always looking to find a balance so you're on an even keel. And yoga does that. Yoga is a tool to help you to do that. And over time, the more and more you practice, the more sensitive and introspective and aware you become of where you are, how imbalanced you are, where your imbalances are, and how to balance them.
I wanted to ask you. You mentioned, funnily enough, I was thinking it as you mentioned it. First of all, do you have a meditation practice, or do you consider your practice a meditation?
My meditation practice is often just sitting in simple cross legs before my practice, just to see what's there. What am I bringing to my practice today? So if I just sit down and my mind is being dragged to external things, sounds, thoughts, I think I'll just go and check the post. Oh, no, I better just do, all that kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, that's there today. All right. And you just notice it. That's what's there today. Or you sit down and you think, I don't know, you might have something troubling you, something emotional, some trouble, and you think, okay, that's there today. So it's not kind of making a judgment. It's just being and recognizing what is there. What am I bringing to that mat? And that in itself, to me, is meditation.
And is that what you do before you practice every day, or most days? Or?
Yes, most days. Sometimes I might sit for 10 minutes, particularly if there's a lot going on. A lot of my mind wanting to go outside, I'll sit there for longer and just watch it without judgment. And it slowly comes in and slowly comes in. And then when it's more within, I'm ready to start my practice.
Mm-hmm. And then, so does that mean that you, in a way, don't know what you're going to practice until you've done that checking in? Partly in that often the fact that you get on your mat is telling you you need to get on your mat. And it might not be that's on my list to practice at 9:30. It might be, I've got a free morning, but do you know what? I just really want to get on my mat. I really need to see what's there. I really need to work with what's there. I need to just be with it. And it transforms, it changes.
as most, I think most practitioners know, people often come and say, oh God, I feel so much better now, or, you know, I really didn't want to come to class, but I'm so glad that I did, because that was really worrying me. And you know what? I'd forgotten all about that. You know, people feel transformed. People are transformed by their practice.
Mm-hmm.
I've also often heard that yoga is a meditation kind of in practice. So it is a form. I would say it is a form of meditation. I think meditation for me is just being aware and in the present moment, and seeing what's there without judgment and without trying to change it, just being with it and seeing what happens when you sit with something. In the same way that if you sit with Adho Mukha Svanasana and your mind says, oh God, I did this yesterday. Do you know what? My arm's aching. I'm going to come down and move on. No, just sit with it. See what happens. And that mental chatter stops. Or maybe it doesn't. And if it doesn't, well, okay, you're going to let it run. Are you going to run with it? You engage with it? Or are you just going to keep, just stay, just wait. And it will, the mental chatter will stop. And that's when you come more within.
I like the way you're kind of not having a dialogue with yourself, but in a sense you're observing, you're objectively observing yourself, and also not necessarily it doesn't sound like you're indulging yourself, although in a way coming to the mat for you is an indulgence because you'd love to do it. But then when something comes up, some resistance, you're not just giving into it, which
Absolutely.
is what the gift that we as Iyengar teachers, I don't know so much about other styles anymore, but basically helping people move through their resistance, because there's so much of it that they come with and that we see.
Yeah, to be with their resistance and watch it change. I often say that students will often, anyone listening to this, my students will go, oh God, yeah. Oh God, yeah. Okay, that's what she's after. That's what she wants us to do. But yeah, it's just to be with things that are uncomfortable instead of trying to change them, which is like my experience with India. I couldn't change India. Something had to change in myself to be in India, because I couldn't change India and my frustration with the way it runs or doesn't run or whatever. Just, well, hang on a minute, just be open to this and see what happens. And that openness, I now absolutely love India, and it's where I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I changed myself. Not I've got to change myself, but I'm just going to be with this. And it changes. And then that helps in everyday life. You know, if you're in a queue at the station, or a queue for something, queue for the checkout, particularly nowadays, or waiting at the lights, you're like, okay, I might need to be somewhere, but I don't need to get riled about this. This is just the way it is. If I just sit with it, it's going to change. And lo and behold, the light changes, the queue goes down, it changed. And so you didn't get all aggravated and, you know, inside of yourself and all angry or resentful or whatever. You stay with it, and it changes. So being on your mat and tolerating resistance and difficulties within your own practice helps you outside of your practice also.
Yeah.
I mean, it comes into your everyday life. And actually our yoga practice is not just what we do on our mat. It is who we are, how we are in everyday life.
Very, very interesting. I'm aware that we've got, I don't know, about another 10 minutes or so, because we realized recently that uploading these videos to Instagram, we're currently uploading another one. It's taking us 24 hours to get it on there. Because they're just the files are, well, I don't know if Instagram, anyway, it doesn't matter. I wanted to ask you, I mean, I feel like I could talk to you for hours. Texts. What text, I'm talking obviously yoga texts or texts that influence you. What texts do you enjoy, or have you read, or do you read them, or? I
don't read a lot of yoga texts, I have to say. I very much enjoy listening to teachers like Christian Pisano, mm-hmm. or like Sally Sullivan, or teachers who naturally come to the yoga texts. I've never been very academic. I kind of left school and did vocational courses. I didn't do A-levels. I couldn't study something, a history or politics, and kind of come out with amazing essays, which is partly my worry about following Christian Pisano. I can't do that kind of thing. I'm much more kind of, as I say, vocational, more practical.
You sound like an intuitive student. You listen. You, in a way, you're studying and kind of allowing the intelligence to come to you. You're using your own intelligence to inform your intelligence.
Yes, and going to teachers who, Alaric Newcomb, I know he comes up quite a lot. He was my main teacher for about 12 years or perhaps longer, and he taught a lot of the philosophical texts in his classes on his yoga retreat. So I'm very open to all of that. I'm just not very good at getting out a book and reading it and understanding it in its staying. So I kind of prefer learning from teachers who can do that, and then they bring it out, they express it perhaps in different ways, and I find I can hold on to that and take that within myself far easier than just reading a text.
So do you still go to classes? Do you ever do that?
At the moment, no, because of lockdown. However, I do look forward to, I don't have a teacher at the moment, and I've just been spending a lot of time in the last year and during the pandemic, really just enjoying my own practice. Again, I've been practicing for 2 hours a day, every day except Sunday.
Do you not get, I try to practice, I'm definitely practicing at least 5 times a week. How do you deal with, A, do you get injured, B, do you get fatigued? Or kind of? Injured?
I don't get serious injuries, but I can kind of tell if I've kind of overdone something. I can often feel in the pose, why are you overdoing that? And it's like, well, hang on, that's interesting. So why am I striving to do more than my body's willing to do at the moment? So again, that dialogue, that internal dialogue is informing my practices. My practices is informing my physical state, my mental state, my physiological state. So in a way, my teacher kind of is my body and my mind as they interact with each other, as they dialogue with each other, if that makes sense. I suppose after 25 years of practice and 18 years of teaching, I'm not sure there's anything else technically I need to know. I've kind of been to so many classes. I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of classes. I don't need any more technical instruction. I've heard it all. I've heard it all before, but I've got enough to work with myself. And I'm sure other students will say this, that you hear your teacher when you're practicing. Yeah. So I think it's also quite important that you, particularly if you're coming to yoga for fresh, that you have a good teacher and one that you trust and that resonates, because you're going to hear them in your own practice for many, many years. So I still hear my teachers and I still feel physical adjustments from experienced teachers. So I'm very much looking forward to getting back into a studio, actually, because I don't think yoga can be taught just behind a screen. No, I think we need to be in a studio with a teacher that we trust, that we develop a relationship with, who can really guide us on our path in a verbal, in a presence way, and in a physical adjustment way. Some physical adjustments I've had from Penny Chaplin, who's been my teacher on and off for quite a while. Some of those physical adjustments I still feel in my body when I'm in my practice. Right. I can feel her touch on that part of the body that I needed to make an adjustment to. So a skillful teacher with a skillful adjustment, again, will talk to you for years to come in your practice.
Very interesting.
So that just goes back to me saying I've got enough kind of adjustments, verbal, physical, technical know-how to just get on your mat, Kate, and see what comes, see what happens. You know where you're stiff, you know where you're resistant. Either go into it today, or today leave it alone and go somewhere else, or whatever.
Okay, this has been fantastic, Kate. I really appreciate listening to everything you had to say. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone who does listen to this will enjoy what you've had to say too. So thank you so much for
you're very welcome. To say time goes by, I could carry on talking for hours.
I mean, I've actually got another question I was going to ask you, but I thought, okay, I'm going to ask you one more question. Earlier on, you said that you found a ballet, you found it a little bit not restrictive or too classical in a way, and too rigid in a way. And one of the I want to call it misconceptions or preconceptions that people have about Iyengar yoga is that it's quite restrictive and quite kind of contained, shall we say. Is that not something that you struggled with when you set out? I mean, obviously, I know I'm an Iyengar teacher, so but I want to hear from you how you found the initial.
I very much enjoyed, benefited, and learned from the discipline. But within that discipline is freedom, because as you know, there's not one way to do Adho Mukha Svanasana. You know, there are thousands of ways to do Adho Mukha Svanasana. So where's so it's not restrictive discipline, it's freedom within discipline. Yeah.
I mean, did you ever try, if you started at Maida Vale, have you ever tried any other styles of yoga?
I went shortly after the foundation course. I went back to India, and I didn't realize that there were loads of different kinds of yoga. I just thought Iyengar yoga, that's what it is. That's what yoga is. And I fell into I was in India, in Goa, and I fell into a practice on the beach with a chap called, I think his name was Rolf. He was a German Ashtanga teacher. And I had hooked up with a practitioner who was an Ashtanga practitioner, and she had the primary series on a piece of paper. So I photocopied it and I put it down on my mat, and I joined the class on the beach back under the palm trees. And 2.5 hours later, I was still there. Everybody else had gone off to have their smoothies and I was still there. And Rolf came up to me and he said, "You're an Iyengar practitioner, aren't you?" And I was like, "Oh my God, how do you know?" I thought, how does he know that? And it's really obvious now, because I wasn't doing it as an Ashtanga sequence. I was taking it as a sequence, that pose, get that right, do your work in that pose, move on to the next pose, do the next pose. So there we go. So I haven't gone to other schools, although I experienced an Ashtanga class as an Iyengar practitioner, and I just thought, it's not for me. I came to the right style straight off. There's enough in it. I don't need to go and dabble with anything else. Everything is in that for me.
Yeah. You just need the time. You need the time to just explore, and that's what you've kind of.
Otherwise, it's just, again, it's that pinball again. It's going outside and looking for external kind of solutions or patches, or I don't know, just ways of making you more comfortable or less comfortable or whatever. Whereas actually, it's all in there. Just get on your mat and be with it, and it will transform you.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. It's been great.
It's a pleasure.
Have a great afternoon.
And you.
Great day, and I'll see you soon.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.